Hey, what's going on guys? It's been a while since I've made a video on this side of the camera. I've just been really busy, like traveling, heaps of shooting and just running my company in general. But I'm really excited to get back into making more videos on this channel for you guys. And one of the most asked questions or most requested video, I guess, during my hiatus was to do with my gimbal setup and exactly what it looks like and how it all works and how I'm able to get the shots that I do using a gimbal. So today I'm going to run you guys through my Zhiyun crane setup, and the camera that I'm using on that gimbal is the Fujifilm X-T2. My main camera is recording this right now, and that is the Red Raven. Reason that I don't use that on the gimbal, I don't have a gimbal that has a payload rating heavy enough to take the camera yet. May get into that later down the track, but for now I'm really happy with the way that the Zhiyun crane performs with the X-T2, which is an awesome camera. If you guys haven't seen my videos about the X-T2, I'll link them in the description below. So it's all currently broken down at the moment. I have all the bits and pieces laid out for the Zhiyun crane setup, and I'm actually going to build it for you guys so you can see exactly how I put it all together, and then that way you guys can see all the little bits and pieces that I use, as well as kind of like my preference for how I like it to be set up for the style of videos that I shoot. So let's get into it. Okay guys, so here we are with everything that we need to set up the Zhiyun crane. I'll start with the camera. So obviously we have the X-T2, and the lens is the 18-55 Fujifilm. A lot of people call this the kit lens. It's a variable aperture f2.8 to f4. This is probably my favorite lens to use with the Zhiyun crane gimbal, simply because of its versatility. However, it is the lens that I use in daylight or well-lit shots. The other lens I use is the Samyang 12mm f2. So this is an equivalent focal length of around 21mm when you're shooting in 4K on the X-T2. And it is a maximum aperture of f2, and it's also manual focus. So I tend to use this lens in more low light situations at like a wedding reception or something like that. Yeah, so it's super solid. I think the ability with the 18-55 to be able to zoom in and really get those unique kind of more telephoto shots with the crane make it just an awesome lens to shoot with, along with the fact that it is very lightweight. Okay, so moving along now to the crane itself. So we have everything that comes standard with the crane in here in the box, except for the spare batteries, which I purchased myself just in case I need spare batteries while I'm on a shoot. I've also got a quick release plate and also the dual handles. So let's get into assembling the crane now. First off, we're just going to pop these batteries into the handle. Screw that on. So the crane does come with two of these little screws that enable you to attach the camera to the base plate of the crane. However, I do things a little bit differently in that I use this base plate. So what I'm going to do first up is screw this on, just make sure I'm getting the correct side. Use the included screw with the crane system to screw this base plate onto the crane itself. So there we go. Now, this is probably the most popular question I get about using the X-T2 with the crane, and is, do you use the battery grip? The answer is no, I don't. So what we're going to do is actually screw this battery grip off. So the reason I don't use the battery grip is that it does make it a little bit hard to balance, and it is pushing on the weight limit of the crane itself, especially when you're going to put a heavier lens onto the Fuji. So I'm going to actually take the base plate off the bottom. Okay, that probably shouldn't happen. So now that we've got the base plate off, I'm going to go ahead and screw this onto the bottom of the camera. So the fact that I have to go and do this every time, I mean, it's not so much of a bigger deal because I usually have one X-T2 that has a battery grip attached for the tripod angle, and then this camera is usually more of my like run and gun kind of A cam. So the battery grip usually stays off this camera. I guess the only time that I would use two battery grips is if I needed both cameras to be recording more long form, like an interview or something like that, in which case I probably wouldn't be using the crane. So let's say during like a wedding ceremony or something like that, this camera would be between the crane and also a monopod, and I wouldn't be recording for longer than say 10 minutes at a time anyway, so I don't necessarily need the grip. Okay, so now that's screwed on, we can go ahead and really easily, and that's the great thing about this, having the plate here, the quick release plate adapter, is that we can go and quickly snap the camera on, and when we're finished with the crane, we can easily just detach rather than having to go and unscrew that little thread mount that comes with the crane itself. Okay, so I've balanced this already, so it should be pretty close, although we are tilting to the left, probably to do with the fact that I've screwed the quick release plate on a little bit far to the left. So let's push that back. Now it is butting up against the motor here, but that is fine. It's not a big deal at all. It just means we can't get to the car door, but that's okay. Looks as though my quick release plate has fallen apart, and I'll fix that later. Okay, so that's a little bit too much. Let's just go back a bit. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So with balancing the crane, you want it to stay in one position when you move it in any direction. It's not quite there. Probably would take another couple of minutes fiddling to get it perfect, but for the sake of this video, I'm just gonna leave it like that. Cool, so you will notice that when I power on the gimbal, and then also power on the camera, that even when I zoom in from 18 to 55, we're still rock solid. There's no movement. It is off balance. So when we turn it off, there we go. You can see that it is off balance, but the motors are actually strong enough to handle the small difference in weight. So zooming this forward, it does obviously bring the weight forward a little bit more, but not enough to destabilize the motors. And that is the reason why I really like this lens a lot for gimbal work. I guess only in well-lit situations, that is the only drawback. In which case I'd fall back to the 12mm Samyang. Cool, so this is great, nice lightweight setup, ready to go. Switch the gimbal on, and we're pretty much ready to shoot. Hit record, and we're ready to go. So the only modification that I've made with the app to the gimbal itself is the speed at which it tilts up and down. So you'll notice it's quite slow, and I'm pushing all the way up on the joystick here. So the reason for that, I've actually made it go as slow as it possibly can, because I like to have nice smooth tilt down or tilt, let's say a tilt up as I'm moving through a scene. I tend to move really slowly with the gimbal. I just think that moving fast, you know, running with something like this doesn't really yield fantastic results, simply because you are obviously going to get a lot more shake of the camera when you're running. So I just like really slow, nice, very controlled movements, and for that reason, that's why I've actually set it to move up and down quite slowly. So as far as settings go, I definitely prefer the default mode that turns with your wrist. I just find it the easiest for me. Obviously controlling the tilt with the joystick, very, very straightforward. The second mode, where your hand doesn't allow the camera to move and you actually move with the joystick, I don't find is as easy to use, but for certain situations it might be the right fit. So while I'm doing these, you know, smooth movements, not really jerking the camera around a lot, I do use the OIS, so I have that switched on while I'm using the gimbal. The next part of this setup that I want to talk through is the dual handle. So this dual handle really helps in the stability of the gimbal, your ability to turn the gimbal in the way that you want it to go, while also taking more of the pressure off one of your arms and distributing it over both hands. So there's a few ways that you can configure this handle. Basically, the way I use it is I mount it like this. So on the bottom, you can mount it halfway down the handle, or you can mount it at the very bottom. I use it at the bottom, and I have these handles facing up. So I have the handles turned upwards. Now, the reason that I do that is because I just think that this is very comfortable. The gimbal is not too high up, it's not right in front of my face where I'm looking at what I'm shooting. It's pretty much in the same position as it would be if I was just using the single handle. Also, you'll notice when we go into underslung mode, now it's looking more like a Ronin, something like a Movi or something like that. And the best thing about this is that we don't necessarily need to use a monitor, because on the X-T2 we can actually just flip the screen up. So now we have complete visibility of what we're doing with our shot. We're just looking down like this, which is fantastic. So if you did want to use a monitor, the dual handle really helps with that process. So I'm not quite going to set one up today, but I do have an example here of how I would do it if I was going to shoot with a monitor. So I have a clamp. This is just like a generic camera clamp that you can get off Amazon or B&H. Basically, you'd clamp that there. You'd take like a thread adapter or something like that and attach that to the top. And then a junior joint or something like a ball head that enables you to position the monitor in any way that you want. And then obviously your monitor there would go on top, and then your cable would run down to the camera. I do have a cable here, but it's not quite long enough for this particular configuration. I am considering getting a Blackmagic 4K recorder so that I can shoot F-Log on the X-T2. And I would probably do a more in-depth video about how I would set that up with the gimbal when that time comes. So I'm going to roll some footage for you guys of some shots that I've been able to get with this setup, the X-T2, both of these lenses, and also the dual hand grip that I've been using. Really enjoying this setup. It's pretty easy to put together. Very simple and straightforward, especially when you combine it with the quick release plate on the bottom. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoy the footage. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video and got something really valuable out of it. As always, leave a comment below any questions that you guys might have for anything that I did not cover in this video. In addition to that, all the links to the equipment and the bits and pieces that I use in this setup are linked below. So yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next video. I hope you enjoyed. See ya.